Bernie Francis is a Mi'kmaq linguist and elder, and he has been dropping by weekly to teach us about the Mi'kmaq language and the culture as it is revealed through that language. Now, with so many people preoccupied with the holidays coming up, we wondered what the Mi'kmaq would traditionally be thinking about this time of year. So, Bernie Francis, once again, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Begwa Muksin.
Kil Begwa Muksin.
Did the Mi'kmaq have a solstice celebration or festival? Is this time of year special for any reason?
It is now, but it wasn't before. Most of the things that we do, everybody does here now. We have our, we're just as anxiously waiting for Santa Claus as you are, and we're just as happy to be eating that turkey and so on. But prior to the arrival, no, we didn't have what we know as Christmas. We didn't even have the words for Christmas. Of course, what we know as the word Christ, which is in Christmas. There was no Christ here for 1,500 years. So we knew nothing about that, and it has nothing to do with our spirituality whatsoever. However, we now have, many of the people were I say, tricked into Christianity, and they now celebrate Christmas. Just like I'm not a believer, but I still, enjoy Christmas. I like Christmas music, I like Christmas food, and so on. But I know where it comes from, and it's not mine, but I enjoy it just the same.
And as far as obviously the religious beliefs aside, there's nothing about this particular time of year, early winter.
No, there really isn't. Unless you begin to look at the months of the year or the moons of the year itself, then you'll begin to see why Mi'kmaq people, let's say, would be happy for January. And but you have to look at them and see what those months of the year are actually saying. Then you will see that, yeah, sure, it's a happy time because that's when the tomcod appears. And there's, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of them on the shore area just waiting to be picked for food. And, so January is a great time. I mean, it's a cold time of the year, but it's also a time to eat a particular type of fish, which is great, because you can see quite easily that, we were not just eating meat all year round, We had a good variety of foods, and the Mi'kmaq people were quite healthy because of that reason. February is another story. That is known as the snow blinder, and it's pronounced abugnajit, and it means it's the time of the year where the sun is very bright, and of course it reflects off the snow, and it's very difficult to see at that time of year. And so everything is difficult. It's cold. There's lots of snow. Hunting is not easy.
It's a hard time of the year.
It's a hard time of the year, and it's also the time of the year that our people were quite concerned about abugnajit because. So much so that they would feed it. See, all of the months of the year in Mi'kmaq are animate. You treat them like persons. You refer to them as persons, a being of some sort, right. I should say. And so that's the way it is. So February is a feared month. So then to this day, elders would put food out on the step, for February, feeding February.
Abugnajit.
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 Right.
Abugnajit.
Yeah.
It's snow blinder.
A snow blinder, exactly.
And because February is, as an entity, is stingy.
Yes,
harsh, right?
It's very harsh, yeah. And as you well know, we don't have the winters that we used to have. We don't get that much snow anymore. And it doesn't get as cold anymore because I know even as a kid, so go back, let's say, 60 years ago, I used to enjoy skating right on Sydney Harbour, and there were cars right on that ice, and somebody would people had made a habit of tying a rope on their bumper, and they have a bunch of us, 12 to 15 little kids, just holding on to the rope while he takes off. It was absolutely fun, but we don't get the temperatures anymore to freeze the Sydney Harbour anymore.
So right. Like we did, but Abugnajit would have been a buganajit.
A buganajit would have been it, yeah.
Would have been really nasty.
That's right.
A couple of thousand
Very,
years
very
ago.
nasty, yeah.
So a buganajit is the snow blinder, what we know or what we call now February.
Yeah.
What was January? What's the name?
It's called Bunamui goose. And a bunamu, or bunamuj, let's say bunamu, is the actual word for the tomcod.
Okay,
it's
so
a
that's
type
a
of fish.
season of, bunamui goose.
Yeah, when you say all of the 11 months all end in igus, which means moon.
Okay.
February is the only one that does not. That's the one that actually means snowblinder. It has nothing to do with the moon. Has more to do with the snow and the sun and the blinding effect that it has. Sigo goose, which is March, that just simply says spring month. So there's nothing there. And then April is Banadamui goose. Now that is
Banadamui goose.
Exactly. And the word in Cape Breton, there's a place name in Cape Breton called Banacady. Now Acady is a Mi'kmaq suffix which means place of.
Like
Right?
Shubenacadie?
Like Shubenacadie,
Okay.
exactly. And so the bun part of that talks about eggs. So Banagadi has to do with the egg-laying place. That's what Banacadie means. So Shubenacadie, if you wanted to go to that place name, it comes from the word Sibegan Egadi. Again, you hear that Egadi. So it's a place of something. Well, what is it? Well, Sibegan is like a ground potato. You know, it's
Okay.
you'll find them under sauce. I've actually tasted one. It tastes pretty much like a regular full-size potato, but they're very small.
I want to come back and talk about the concept of taking a station of time or a portion of time, naming the entity of time based on what you're observing in nature. You were speaking of
Bunamu
Bunamu
igus. Bunamu
the
igus.
time of the eggs or the
No,
gathering.
the time of the tomcod.
The time of the todcod.
Yeah,
Sorry,
tomcod. Yeah.
the tomcod. So it's interesting here because because of our tie to the calendar now,
Yeah.
we'll say like, oh boy, it's cold, really cold this year for June, or wow, what a warm December.
Right.
But it seems to me, just from what I'm hearing from you, that
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have been something, because it's like, we're not moving to the next season until we note the season.
Right, exactly. That's right. That's why I think if you look at, let's talk about the month of May. Very easy to tell that it's May because that is known as Soltjuigus, and it means the frog croaking month. Sure enough, that is the time of year when you hear the frogs, and one of the best ponds I've ever heard the frogs croaking was the little pond next to the Quality Inn at the airport. That is the best I've ever heard, and I heard it last year for the first time. So that was the reason why Mi'kmaq people called it the frog croaking month.
And I love the concept too that we're not going to name something arbitrarily based on what we want, but we will recognize it when it happens. It's
Right,
a very
exactly.
fundamental difference.
Right.
So, given that though, how would the Mi'kmaq ask about the passage of time? Like, how would they talk about, hey, this happened yesterday, or tomorrow we're going here, next week I want to do this?
Right, exactly.
What's that like?
Again, we have, besides the sun, we also have the moon.
Okay, yeah.
So we also look at that too. But say, for example, we have words, we have numbers that will go to multi-millions. We have
Yes.
the words for it. So if you want to say, for example, this happened 10 years ago, we have a word that will, identify that, medlasibun, which is 10 years ago, or dabuskegibun, which is 20 years ago. You can handle it very,
Yeah.
very easily in that way. And if you want to say 10 years from now, again, you'd say midlasibun, that is 10 years from now, this is what it will look like, or this is what you will be like, this kind of thing. So we have all kinds of words, to do that. And of course, you must know, by the fact that we have those words, we must know when a year goes by. Of
Yeah.
course we do.
Yeah.
But if you go from tomcod to tomcod, that is
There's-
from January to January, there's your year.
That's the cycle that it's
Exactly.
just gone through. We've completed.
Sure. exactly.
Okay, that was my
Yeah,
other
yeah.
my other question for you. Then it's like, but a year may not be. Then Sorry, I keep getting hung up on this, but
Yeah.
like a year, that cycle may not always be a year, right? It'd be roughly a year,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
a little more, a little less, but depending on what's happening on the planet, it may be 13
Yeah.
months, maybe 11 and a half.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is with the calendar, the non-native calendar. I mean, we say that there's 7 days in a week. Well, a month they tell us there's 4 weeks. Yeah, well, that's more than 28 days,
Yeah.
right? Except for February, where we get 29 days, But it's that 29th day that caused all kinds of problems for the Julian calendar, because, it ended up that because they didn't take it into account, that their months became completely skewed because, like October, the word OCT in the word October does not mean 10th, it means 8th. So October was the 8th month, you know what I mean?
At some point.
At some point, yeah.
Further to the passage of time, like you say, you have language for years, for 10 years. What about the concept of time when it gets into smaller parcels, like minutes, seconds?
Oh, yeah. That is, again, we didn't have watches.
No.
That's for sure. But people will say something like, "Namultus kisabaniya," I will see you when the sun has risen.
Right.
Things like that. Or I will see you when gisimiaulagwek. That's immediately after noon, after lunch.
Right.
Really, is what you're saying. So we have ways of dealing with that too. It's not exactly to the minute, but that's not important because the Mi'kmaq people don't pay attention to the watches nowadays. In fact, that's what we. Have you ever heard the concept Indian time?
Oh, I've heard the term.
Yeah, that's a great term because the Mi'kmaq people, the Indian time really means like we're late for little, little things that happen like ceremonies or births or deaths or something like that. We'd be late, maybe 1 hour. 2 hours would be late for ceremonies, and so on. And 3 hours were early for bingo.
Oh my.
So that's our that's what they call teasingly, of course.
Yes,
you
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I mean. Yeah, but no, it's not down to the second because our people's time is things will happen when they're supposed to happen, and that's the way it is. Like one time, a professor came, to some function that was going on in Membertou, and I think it was set for 10 o'clock, and he arrived at 10 o'clock. We didn't get going until 11:30, and he was wild. He thought that, gee, this is, but that's just the way it is in the community. They're not that overly concerned about the minutes and the seconds,
It is a fantastic the concept, and this is what excites me about these conversations, that the worldview underlying the language, how the language reveals that to us, but that things will happen when they're meant to happen.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, the language is so very different from English. Don't forget, you may have heard the term verb-oriented language. Well, English is a noun-oriented language, whereas in Mi'kmaq, it's all verb. Everything happens in the verb. You'll have your subject, you'll have your verb, and you'll have your object, and you'll probably have an object on an object. That's called the obviative form. That's easily handled by Mi'kmaq. But remember that it's a highly inflected language. That is, you could take one intransitive verb, that is a verb that does not take an object, it's just a simple verb like my name is, which would be Deluisi. You can put about 350 endings to that verb.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very, very complex. In that respect, it's like Latin, it's like French, it's like Spanish, it's like Italian, Portuguese, They're highly inflected languages, well, because they come from Latin. Well, Mi'kmaq is a very highly inflected language. That's a simple intransitive verb I talked about.
Yeah.
If you take a transitive verb or one that actually takes an object, like, for example, I am feeding you or I am hitting you or something, that will take about 430 different variations. So you have, about 80 more.
So what do all
like
those variations then account for or allow for?
You name it. Like you can say, for example, Deluisi, my name is. You can say Deluisi, my name was. You could say Deluisi, this my name will be. Deluisi, my name would have been if. They call that the if conjunct. And then you have your when conjunct and so on.
Yeah.
So we have all of those variations that Mi'kmaq handles beautifully. You don't have to add any more words. All you need to do is add an inflectional ending, and you'll have it.
And it's just, like I said to you before we came on mic here, it has to be just a function. I don't know. You're a linguist. How old is English?
Oh, well, English is relatively new. That's why it surprises me sometimes that when, like I was a translator in court, for many years, and I still do it from time to time. But English is relatively new language, and of course, there's two big languages. You'll have German and you'll have Latin. Those are the two big languages that make up English.
Mommy and daddy.
Hey, mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, the Latinate part of English is what we call the sophisticated English. We might say ascending,
Yes.
right? The Germanic part of English, you might say going up. You
Yes.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a more, basic way of saying things. So you get those two languages. So when people migrated, of course, and left the areas that they were in and went to England, shall we say, although the language changed, and all languages do, let's say after 500 years, you'll have two different languages.
Yes.
You'll still see all kinds of similarities because of if you put them on paper or a chalkboard or something, you'll see all kinds of similarities. But they are two distinct languages after that. And if you go maybe 10,000 years, you'll see no similarities. That's why we have no similarities between Mohawk, Iroquois, Cayuga, Tuscarora. All of those languages are very different. But the Mi'kmaq language has languages. There's 51 languages that are related. So we're about, you'll find similarities there.
But 13,000.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah, that's right.
That's an old language, and is that what gives rise to the complexity of it?
Well, languages, especially the Mi'kmaq language, it grew from here. This is something that an elder wrote. He dictated a letter to Father Mayar. He was a missionary priest, and he was writing it to Cornwallis at the time. We're talking about 1749, 1750. At that time, he said, what he was saying to him was that we didn't come from anywhere else. So Sahalia comes that it sprouted from here. So he's using that analogy that we didn't come from here. We didn't come from anywhere else, rather. We came from here, we sprouted from here, and the language and everything else, the philosophy, all has to do with the land, and so much of our language has to do with the landscape and the sky and the weather, like
but
that.
all that here in Mi'kmaq.
Exactly, yeah. I got a glimpse one time of the Hawaiian calendar, and their months, they're very different from here because the weather is different, the animals are different, and so on. So, of course, they're going to have a different name for each month.
Bernie, thank you so much for this. As always, it's revealing, and I really do appreciate you coming in. I'm going to try this again. Juguadisk.
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 Exactly.
Juguadisk.
Juguadisk.
Come again.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, and I thank you very much.
This is CBC Public Broadcasting.